Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm good.
There we go.
Good morning.
All right. Welcome back. You are now to High at 9 News. Thank you all for joining us yet again. But also, for High at 9, but also high noon on the East Coast. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street, and it's Thursday, December 15th, 2022, but also Cupcake Day for those of you like me that constantly tell yourselves eating 4 in one setting is not as bad as taking down an actual full-size cake in the same instance. National Bill of Rights Day is a reminder to U.S. history deficient nation that is founding document is indeed not the same as the Constitution. National Cat Herders Day, because weird people do weird shit. And finally, National Wear Your Pearls Day, because everyone can appreciate the classic simplistic beauty of a pearl necklace. For everybody watching, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to High at 9 News on all social media platforms. We're live weekdays on YouTube and Twitch, audio only on Clubhouse. But also, if you choose the Clubhouse route, you can to participate in the show by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story presented. We'll be getting things started in a second here, but first, this.
At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit and hustle and diversity of our great city of Angels, and we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Coming up first, we have the dope dad himself coming up with a hot story today. So hot that he baked it in his daughter's easy bake oven and put some sprinkles on it because it's National Cupcake Day. When he's not babysitting little baby kids, you can find him babysitting grown-ass adults at a TEDx function where he's constantly changing their diapers as well as handing them crying towels. That's right. It is the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte.
Big shout out to the crying towels out there, man. So my story today is a bit of it's a rough one for some of you out there. Honestly, got to give my heart's going out to the people of Southern Oregon in the cartel drug trade. And just as a small disclaimer here. It's not going to be for the faint of heart for everybody. There's parts of this shit. All right, anyways, my story, my headline's coming from Benzinga by Nia Jinjak. Narco slaves worked to death on illegal cannabis farms. Report reveals heartbreaking reality. Oregon locals and officials have been sounding the alarm on illegal cultivation site activity run by cartels for years, including stories of human trafficking and workers being subjected to slave-like conditions. But the reports never really picked up much steam outside of the state. Maybe Tuesday evening, ABC News offering a little amplification by releasing their own take on a year-long investigation by Maria Villarreal, releasing never-before-seen footage, primetime, the media giant's ABC News Live Prime broadcast of the reporter following law enforcement officials raiding illegal weed farms in rural Southern Oregon will help them out a little bit. ABC chose to avoid cliche headlines of massive illegal grows and distribution operations as the focal point of their story. Instead, they pressed hard on the exploitation of laborers working at the heart of the cultivation operators, where in several cases, they have been literally working. The sites highlighted were discovered in terrible living conditions, without bathrooms, forced to sleep in tents, not being paid, and being sold into prostitution. They revealed cartels still very much a huge part of the problem, despite weed being legal in Oregon for 10 years now. Robert Hamer is a special agent in charge of Homeland Security investigations for Pacific Northwest. He claims on camera that bodies of narco slaves are being dropped off frequently to his office, and claims that there's not much that we can do about it or that can be done without declaring a national state of emergency. Hamer blames the rise of these illegal operations on the big weed corporations that have taken over the cannabis trade in the U.S. They're very sophisticated. We are seeing the exploitation of our real estate markets. We're seeing the exploitation of our banking industry, all related to this ever-growing threat down here. In October this year, Villarreal joined Hamer's team on a joint raid where they teamed up with local Southern Oregon authorities outside Murd to hit three properties in the same neighborhood, where the cameras caught agents in real time discovering 17 workers and a 2-year-old toddler. Dissatisfied with law enforcement failure to stop the cartel ops in his own backyard, Cave Junction resident Chris Hall used his own cameras to sneak on these properties and post publicly what's been going on. Hall comes on camera and he says that the term narco slave has been an issue locals have struggled to gain traction with, as they've tried for years to effectively report on the problem. But he defends it and says that it's not at all hyperbole. Being where living in slave conditions, people were living in slave conditions. They were not allowed to leave properties. They were under armed guards. Being tied to narco cartel, domestic terrorism, does that term not properly identify what's really going on? Though this year, in the same area, law enforcement confirms discovery of and confiscation of more than 100 illegal grow houses, over 8,500 illegal plants, and 7,000 pounds of processed weed. Hall says that he's got footage of over 800 grows around Cave Junction alone, and warns his close neighbors in California tough exposés in the works are in the works to expose their issues exponentially worse than what's a few miles north. A human toll is impossible to hide from. It is happening here in Cave Junction. It is happening throughout Southwest Oregon, and it's happening throughout the northern parts of California, Hall said. Although the story is more than enough to turn the stomach of anybody with a heart, especially those of us in the industry who try our best to do the right things within our own communities and abroad when it comes to protecting and promoting the generational integrity of the plant. For me, it was really a sobering reminder that a dark side of capitalism still very much exists, and it's not just in foreign third world countries mainstream news sources love to focus on. I'm Rico Lamitte, dopest dad on the street, reporting for High 9 News, interested in hearing everybody else's thoughts on this one.
I'm right with how you summed it up, Rico.
Yeah,
there's been bad actors for a long time in this, and the sooner we move to decriminalization, descheduling, and then legalization without this crazy amount of tax and regulation, the sooner we can get on to growing plants and get out of this whole thing. We just see it we see it in the legal and illegal worlds. The profit motive is what is driving our society down the tubes.
Agreed. That was really interesting the way he the special agent was the one who was calling out like big weed on this one.
I mean, did you expect anything less from the special agent?
Go on.
I'm just posing that as a question. Did you expect anything less? I know I didn't.
I thought he would be, blaming the locals. He'd be blaming, like the cartel. But he's actually blaming it on big weed. He's not blaming it on,
Yes, but to him, big weed is his biggest enemy, because big weed is what is stopping him from being able to really enforce on weed like he used to in the past.
Okay. I see. Picking up what you're putting down now.
You see where I'm going with that now?
Yeah. I got you. I got a shovel now. I can dig it.
Yeah, you got a shovel. Mm-hmm.
With weed being legal, cops have to go after real scary bad guys.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, I mean, they're supposed to at least.
Yeah. And they also don't get the seizure money because you roll up to somebody who's growing weed and then you just civil seize all of their assets. Regardless of the criminal penalty, all of their money and assets go into a civil case where they'll have to pay $10,000 to $50,000 to a lawyer to get back whatever you've taken. And that,
you know,
those things that are seized, let me just finish this. Those things that are seized don't go into the city, county, or state budget. They go directly into the budget of the law enforcement agency who seized them. Thank you.
That 80% of that goes into the budget of the seizing agency.
Okay. Yeah, there
yes,
it is.
80% of that does. The other 20% goes into other agencies that help coordinate in the seizure of that and those assets as well.
No kidding.
Speaking of which, I don't know if you heard about this, but do you remember when there was a number of different federal authorities that were parked on the 5 freeway, and they were just waiting? Normally agents on the 5 freeway, they are waiting for people that are driving southward because they know that they're bringing all the packs down to Southern California. Yeah. However, these agents were waiting on the northbound side for people because what they had is they had this little magic little nifty device in there that would be able to count the money that they had in a vehicle based off the little magnetic strips that's in money. And
I've heard that, but I've never seen the gun.
I know people that this happened to.
Oh,
and
wow.
They got pulled over with over $10,000 in cash, and the cops basically came over and said, either you have one or two options: you either give us the cash, or we're going to just go to your house and find out what's there. Oh, and so everybody I know gave them the cash, and basically they said, okay, if you want to fight for it, you can fight for it, but no one that I know has ever fought for it, because that's just admitting to a whole nother class of felonies.
Yeah, even if you win the lawsuit, get your money back, then they turn you over to the IRS.
Bro, it's so crazy. So crazy.
I would go a step further than the special agent and kind of lay this human trafficking problem at the foot of the government's doors. I mean, their failure to regulate and do something with this industry is what caused these problems. It's not big weed. It's the U.S. government.
Isn't also including our problems at the border?
I'm not getting into immigration. Let's that's not a good. We only have an hour.
Gretchen, I would even take it a step further than that with the government, because they're the ones who made this shit. They're the ones who prohibited this shit. You know, like, leave it to the U.S. government to always be, oh, we're trying to fight back and we're trying to solve these issues that they fucking caused in the first place.
Yeah, 100%.
Not only in this industry, but in, like in housekeeping and in childcare. There are so many people that are not being paid appropriately, and not being given any type of benefits or any additional privileges that ordinary employees would get. And it's a whole underground system of employment or underemployment or slavery that just is allowed to persist all over the country. You read about these housekeepers in really fabulous neighborhoods that are living with the family, and they're just there. They don't get any money. They just get room and board for what they do. It's terrible.
That's true. So let's keep it moving here, man. Let's just try to pick things up with a little brighter note, coming up from my man, the longest continuously operating retailer in the game, always smoking on the best weed in the world every day, whether it's in West Hollywood, whether it's down in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, or maybe it's up at Eagle Mountain, where he's up there battling it out with the best of the hashishists in the effort.
Hashashins.
Hashidians. No.
In an effort to be the last man standing and never be the one to use the crying towel. Jason Beck, what do you have for us on this beautiful Thursday morning?
That's right. No crying towel, because, there's no tears in cannabis. If you ever saw a major league, or what was that, a league of their own, there's no crying in baseball. Well, there's no crying in weed. But today,
it was a league of their own.
Yeah, there we go. Yes. But today, my story is a heartfelt story I think you guys are all going to love. Because New Hampshire House has a Republican and a Democratic leaders unite on a marijuana legalization bill. That is right. A bipartisan bill going down in New Hampshire. The top Republican and Democrat in New Hampshire's House of Representatives are teaming up to introduce a bill to legalize the possession and retail sale of marijuana in New Hampshire. The bill, which has yet to be released, already has the backing of a coalition that includes the liberal American Civil Liberties Union and the conservative Americans for Prosperity. The proposal would permit anyone 21 and over to possess or give away up to 4 ounces of marijuana, annual records of past marijuana possession offenses, and allow state-approved retailers to sell cannabis. Retail sales would be taxed at 8.5%. It would also allow adults over the age of 21 to securely cultivate up to 6 plants, 3 of which may be mature, and possesses the cannabis produced by those plants at home. The House has long stood united in finding a pathway to getting this done for the Granite Staters, said House Majority Leader Jason Osborne. In a quote, he says, with any luck, the Senate will come around to supporting the will of the vast majority of New Hampshire's citizens. Money generated by the marijuana sales would be earmarked for state pensions and substance abuse prevention. It would also flow to towns that permit retail sales and to law enforcement, basically. House Democratic leader Matt William pointed to New Hampshire's outlier status in the region when it comes to legalizing adult use cannabis. He said, in addition to increased revenue, cannabis users in neighboring states benefit from safer testing and regulation of the product. Legalization of adult possession of small amounts of cannabis is the right thing for New Hampshire to do, and we must get it done in 2023, Wellham said. The New Hampshire decriminalized marijuana for personal use back in 2017, but according to the ACLU, 1,120 people were charged with marijuana possession in New Hampshire in 2021 alone. The ACLU says arrest data shows Black people are far more likely to be arrested on marijuana charges than white people, even though both groups use cannabis at comparable rates. The House has repeatedly backed plans to legalize cannabis, and the Senate never has. The governor, Chris Sununu, is another potential obstacle. Sununu has said it may be inevitable that New Hampshire joins neighboring states to legalize marijuana, but as recently as last week, Sununu told CNN that we are not there yet and called legalization still rife with a lot of problems, he says. Well, I'll tell you what, Governor, you need to get on the side of your people here in New Hampshire. And in regards to all these convictions in New Hampshire, I do just want to make one state, because New Hampshire is one of my most favorite states when it comes to judicial law, because New Hampshire is the only state in the United States that when you take a case to a jury trial, that your jurors are aware and notified of what jury nullification is and prior to the trial. So shout out to New Hampshire and good luck to all the Granite State residents. I hope you guys are able to pull this off as a victory. And this is Jason Beck reporting for the High at 9 News. What do y'all think?
Well, it's nice to see Dems and Republicans playing together. I think that, this is definitely going to happen. I don't know what the deal with the Senate is or Sununu and what's taking them so long. But generally, when things start happening in New England, such as Massachusetts, Maine, others, they all fall. So they're so close together, they all just kind of do what each other does. So I'm surprised it's taken them this long. But I don't think it is going to be long for New Hampshire to get this done.
What do you think about that 8.5% tax rate that they're talking about? I mean, because New Hampshire on their license plate is the slogan "Live free or die."
I don't think that has to do with taxes, that slogan. Although don't they not have sales tax in New Hampshire or something?
Yeah, I don't think they have.
There's some major tax that New Hampshire does not have. It might be income tax. I don't remember.
I know all my cousins that live in Vermont, they drive to New Hampshire to buy all their alcohol because of the taxes.
Or is it Rhode Island?
No, it's definitely New Hampshire.
Doesn't have sales tax.
No, it's New Hampshire.
But I mean, I think one thing they have to do to make this palatable to Republicans is to have some type of tax. I mean, because you have to show that this is going to benefit the government in some way, like they said for state pensions or other ways. That's generally how you get it through a more conservative state.
Yeah, just on a quick Google, New Hampshire levels no income, capital gains, asset protection, estate, or sales tax.
Wow.
And although
Shout out to New Hampshire.
the property taxes are the fourth highest in the country.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same thing with Oregon. Oregon has no sales tax and a low income tax, but a real high property tax.
So I guess New Hampshire's a great place to have a business, but not to live.
You also got moose in like 10 feet of snow.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's too low for me, dude.
I don't know. Does Maine have a better tax deal? Because then Maine has such a great cannabis program, and they allow you to have a ton of home grow.
And they actually have like some good weed out there. I've seen
Maine
some
really
fire weed come out of Maine.
I'm so surprised to hear you say that coming out of Maine. I think there's just some very great little cultivators that are doing some good small grows, small batch stuff.
I think it was. I think Liz Rogan actually said that she's vouching for Maine weed. Gotta get me some of that shit.
She's vouching for Maine weed.
Maine weed.
You guys are
I've spoken with a lot of Maine cultivators. They're an interesting bunch, and talking to folks, they do say that Maine has some very good cannabis coming out of it.
They say it has some good cannabis coming out of there.
Yes, and this is not just, and this is from other people, not just Mainers saying that they have good weed. This is
that what you call them, Mainers?
They're called Mainers, yeah.
Mainers, yeah.
Mainlanders.
Not Maynards, but Mainers.
What do you call when you're from New Hampshire?
You're a granite.
Granite?
Yes. Yes. For those that don't know, New Hampshire is known as the Granite State.
Granitians.
Yes. Yes. So, well, I'm glad you guys all enjoyed that. Nickolas, you have any comments on this New Hampshire-ness going on? Nickolas, are you with us, Nickolas?
As opposed to the old Hampshire.
Yeah, I was on mute.
There we go. Any thoughts on this New Hampshire-ness going on?
No, not really.
What do you think about New Hampshire?
I got a question for El Guapo, because El Guapo keeps talking about state-run stores. Where are you getting state-run stores?
So New Hampshire, all their liquor stores are state-ran stores. So I think that's where he's coming from. All their liquor sales are all done through the state, similar to the Washington state
or Virginia, the ABC stores.
I don't understand the connection to cannabis.
I think he's thinking that New Hampshire, when they do this, that they will have state sanctioned stores similar to how they distribute alcohol in the state. I think that's what he's trying to allude to.
I get it. I'm asking where he's getting this from, because no other state has done it that way. So why would he think New Hampshire's going that direction?
Oh, he says his family has a camp in New Hampshire, and the people in New Hampshire call the people from Maine Flatlanders. That's funny because in Michigan, the northern Michigan people call the people down in Detroit the Flatlanders. Everybody.
Can you extrapolate upon your family having a camp there? Is that like a local slang for like land?
Yeah, it's like usually a hunting camp or a with some acreage.
Yeah, I'm not trying to talk
for
shit.
Deer season, bro. It's for deer season. We hunt deer after Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, shout out.
They don't have to be necessarily, but they're usually kind of remote.
Yeah, some of my family has a hunting camp up at the top of the Vermont on Jay Peak. Yes. All right. Well, yeah. Coming up next, she's a political strategist by day and a baker by night. A true female multitasker who can not only bake up a storm, but also knows how to make the sausage on Capitol Hill. She's the founder of Panoptic Strategies and our very own Washington insider. Taking off the apron and coming up next is none other than the Gretchen Gailey.
Okay, well, I was going to have a guest do my main talking, and that person is not here yet. So I'm just going to wing it.
If you want, Gretchen, we can wing it. You know what, Gretchen, we're gonna wait.
Yeah, why don't y'all come back to me?
Yeah, well, we're gonna come back to you.
In the meantime, update on Safe hasn't happened. Nancy May sucks. Back to you.
Gretchen hates all other conservative women. Put it out.
I do not. The chick put out a tweet yesterday that went nowhere and got people all riled up.
I saw her tweet. I retweeted it.
She's the Highlander of conservative women. You must take
Some
her
liberal blocked her, and so she was excited about it. Yeah.
Gretchen,
all right.
She original Nancy Mace. She stole her swag.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, coming up next, he's a blunt-blowing Fresno-based man of the people, representing the Black conservative voice whose existence Joe Biden would love to silence for even acknowledging it exists. Here to change the narrative, it is the governor himself, Nickolas Wildstar.
Hello, and good morning, everyone. I guess we're going back over to the East Coast.
Yeah.
Starting next year, Massachusetts will become the first legal recreational marijuana state in the nation to add lessons about cannabis impairment to drivers' education programs. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation announced recently. The new curriculum of propaganda that has been oh so cleverly named Shifting Gears, the blunt truth about marijuana and driving, was created by AAA. You heard that right. School curriculums are being created by a car roadside repair service. Officials estimate that approximately 50,000 young drivers will be taught the program each year in approximately 700 driving schools across the state. All first-time drivers younger than 18 in Massachusetts are required to complete 30 hours of classroom instruction before they can receive a full unrestricted license. The current driver education module addressing impaired driving will be updated to include research-based information on cannabis, explaining how tetrahydrocannabinol, aka THC, the active chemical in marijuana, affects cognition, vision, reaction time, and perception of time and distance. Mass.dot officials also said the Registry of Motor Vehicles, AAA, and the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission are planning to waste a great deal of taxpayers' money on an elaborate, overpriced event to tout the new program on Friday. Massachusetts voters approved the legalization of marijuana in November of 2016, and the state became the first on the East Coast with regulated recreational marijuana stores on November 20th, 2019. This is the first generation of driver education students to be licensed since cannabis became legal in Massachusetts. And AAA research shows that impaired driving crashes may increase and continue to injure and kill motorists and their passengers, officials wrote. Unlike DARE, MAD, MADD, and every other substance use program that goes into schools to brainwash a generation of youngsters, I'm almost certain that this boondoggle will be just as much of a failure as everything else the government touches. Reporting for the High 9 News Hour, and for the last time for 2022, this is Nick Wildstar, a.k.a. the Governor. Speak now and forever hold your peace. Until next year.
I have so many things to say about this. I mean, I can't believe that they're going to come out with a bunch of data based on or a bunch of, a whole public service campaign based on virtually no data. There's just nothing here to support that driving is significantly impacted by using cannabis when you're studying it in a laboratory. Using cannabis and using alcohol is probably the most dangerous combination for getting behind the wheel. But what they're doing with cannabis is making assumptions, because when people get in accidents, if they test positive for weed, then they make that weed part of the reason why they got in an accident. Not, they don't know when the person ingested, if the person was even under the influence at the time of the impact. So you could have smoked over the weekend, 3 days ago, got in a car accident on Wednesday, and the cannabis is the reason for the car accident. Just like everything else, every time a young person has a heart attack, they say, oh my God, well, he was smoking weed. Or, anytime somebody has a really serious pneumonia and gets hospitalized and they test positive for weed, that always comes up every single time you talk about the patient, just so that you can remember how horrible cannabis is for you. So this is just a ridiculous thing to create this entire public service campaign, really, which is just a front for some good advertising for AAA. Because every mom and dad across the state is like, listen, honey, when you get your car, we're going to put you on the AAA. And then if you need to be towed, you just call AAA. And, that was just part of growing up in Michigan. All of my friends and I had a AAA card because you were always driving yourself into a snowbank when you were a new driver.
There's no AAA in Florida.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Dr. Mary, with that. And I think we really need to, as a nation, stop trying to regulate and stop trying to fucking like make laws before the science hasn't even been established yet. They're always trying to put people in the box before the parameters have been.
So the CHP release. What are you saying, Gretchen?
You think we should be regulated before we even figure in?
Hold on, Gretchen. You think that drug driving is a real thing?
I don't think, and I think Dr. Mary will agree with me, that cannabis affects people differently. So absolutely, someone could be impaired using cannabis before they drive, and I think teens should be made aware of that because the kids don't know jack. And I think that Nickolas Wildstar. Let me finish, Rico. I think Nickolas, in his delivery, may have missed a few things. These are not going into the schools. This education is going into driving schools. So people are paying to have this done. It's not like it's just being thrown at kids. Everyone knows that AAA also sells insurance. I mean, this is not that they're just the guy who comes and changes your tire. So I think this is totally on brand for AAA. I don't think it's that crazy at all to teach people that you might be impaired from using cannabis.
Well, I guess there's two things about that, though. I mean, you're going to have to show me what impairment with cannabis does, because the studies where people get high and are acutely high, which would be considered impaired, there's no difference in their driving capabilities that is able to be measured in a lab. I mean, where they put them in a simulated driving setting. So, and if you're a person who's smoking weed all the time, it's just like a person who takes a sedating antidepressant or a person who takes opioids for their pain all the time. They're not going to have their driving impacted either. We don't restrict those drivers. So we just need more data before we start before we arm the police with any, with these whole, like, if you smell weed, then that gives you the authority to take the driver down.
I'm sorry, I completely missed in this story where they said the police are cracking down and banging heads for cannabis.
Police are always cracking down and banging heads.
We're reading a lot into a story about AAA providing a driver's ed program to driving schools. I just wonder,
is this just more reefer madness being taught to our young kids in the form of a AAA delivery van?
Dr. Mary, 100%. People are not impaired using drugs ever.
Oh, I mean, no, I didn't say that.
I mean, most people on drugs can't afford a car.
But then show me the study that looked at 60 people and put them in a driving simulation after they got high and they were bad drivers. I mean, I suppose maybe some of them might have been, but we really don't have that data to support that. We really don't, unless you make cannabis.
So here's what's happened so far. The CHP had a year-long study to determine if they were going to institute a drug driving statute.
This is California Highway Patrol you're referencing,
California
right?
Highway Patrol, to California State Police. Yeah, and they recommended against it. They said cannabis has a moderate, albeit variable, effect on drivers, but there has been no demonstrable uptick in car crashes related to cannabis use. And also, like, come to the Emerald Cup judging. Like, we'll bring Jason and I will bring a camera. We smoke joints for 10, 12 hours straight and then drive ourselves home just fine.
Hold on. What about even we were just at the Ego Clash and we were watching all the Wooks drive down the hill, okay, that were all dabbed out of their minds, okay, but everybody made it home safely.
And when you get high, the only thing you really do is
those aren't really studies,
No,
and
they're
you
anecdotal.
could say that the people may have been going home along a very well-learned path, but that's important too. That if you drive to Walmart and you drive to Walmart every day, you're much less likely to have problems with that. But the other thing, Gretchen, with these driving schools is that every single kid who learns how to drive, which is basically everybody, they all have to go to a driving school to learn how to drive. So
get indoctrinated.
Like when we were kids, the school used to provide the cars in the parking lot over the summer, and the school taught the kids how to drive. It was like part of the curriculum of the high school, and you didn't have to pay for it. But now if you want your kid to learn to drive, you've got to pay, your $400 or $600 to have somebody drive them around. Yeah. So putting it in the driving schools is basically putting it in the driving curriculum for every new driver.
And no one is suggesting that driving impaired means you're going to drive off a cliff and kill 10 children. I mean, it could also mean you're going to drive 5 miles per hour and, sit at a stop sign for 10 minutes. I mean, who knows what? But to pretend that cannabis does not have an effect on people's driving, I think is silly.
I don't think that's the issue. I think that the effect of cannabis on people's driving is usually to make them a little bit less egocentric, a little more cautious, a little bit more conscientious of drivers for the most part, and I'll stand by that.
To my understanding, in the studies that I know that have been based off of drug driving have actually shown that cannabis drivers may drive a little bit slower, may stop at a stop sign a little bit longer, and may use a little bit more caution when driving, as opposed to the vice that they try to spin it around, which is alcohol, which causes you to make erratic decisions, speed, and just run stop signs.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have you heard people say, like, if you're driving, stop at the stop sign and count 1,000,
1, 2,
and then start again, because the time dilation throws off your ability. So you may think that you're sitting there for longer or shorter. So, but it makes you much more conscious of all of the actions you're doing as a driver. But I mean, a kid running out in the road, is it going to slow your ability to hit the brakes? Those are very infrequent situations when you're driving. And,
do you remember that public safety ad back in the day?
But if you're going to do it on cannabis, I mean, if you're going to get behind a cannabis PSA, then get behind like opioids, or if you start a sedating antidepressant, or if you take a sleeping pill and you're driving at 4 p.m, because studies have proven that people who take sleeping pills have more accidents at 4 p.m. Or if you didn't even sleep well the night before, you do these micro sleeps, and then you're a high risk person between the hours of 4 and 6 when you're commuting home from work. So they should put a sleep campaign. If they actually gave a shit about the drivers and people not getting into accidents and not just maintaining a prohibition, they would do a sleep campaign, because that's far more serious in our country.
Yes, we got to move to a commercial real quick, because we have a special guest with us, so we got to get through this real quick.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you want to give the disclaimer and everything?
You want to grow some of the best weed in the world? Then you must start with the best genetics in the world. Go to www.dnagenetics.shop to order regular, feminized, or autoflower beans. All of your favorite DNA genetics cultivars, such as Kosher Kush, Skywalker Kush, and oh yeah, Chocolate Truffle Shuffle. Boasting more cannabis awards for their award-winning genetics than any other company in the world. Remember to go to www.dnagenetics.shop to see why our terps don't lie.
The thoughts, opinions, and shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers make no representation regarding the legal status of any substance in any country, area, territory, or its authorities. The views expressed in this room do not establish any fiduciary responsibility or relationship. Our sponsors do not imply or constitute any endorsement by us or the expression of any opinion whatsoever on the part of any speaker on stage. If you are easily offended, and you are an easily offended person, we feel bad for you, but we still don't care.
Flying into LAX, you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX, located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard, and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention you'd like to get High at 9 for 10% off your full order.
This spicy red-headed conservatives, well known in underground DC circles for cooking up excellence in the kitchen. But don't you dare let that apron and pretty smile fool you. She's never backing down from a verbal sparring session with pot-loving libs across the aisle. Comes to the stage next and bringing us a special guest with her today, the founder of Panoptic Strategy, Gretchen Gailey.
Good afternoon from good old Slippery Slope, DC. My headline is actually looking back at Rico's headline from yesterday. Cannabis Insider expert predicts FDA will legitimize CBD by end of next year. And all of us Washington insiders stick together. So I called my good friend Sherry Orlowitz from the CFCR, and I asked her if she could join us today to perhaps provide a little more insight on the discussions that she's had with the FDA and what she meant when she was talking to Benzinga just the other week about CBD and the FDA proceeding to perhaps regulate it in 2023. Sherry?
Hi there. Great to see you, Gretchen. Love your conservative bent and love the liberal bent getting together. This is what we need to have a healthy industry. So what would you like me to tell you?
We try. I know that CFCR, for those who do not know, is the Council for Federal Cannabis Regulation. And you guys have no particular bent towards legalization, just that when it happens, it needs to be regulated, and you believe in the science, and that's how things should be looked at. When you've been having discussions with the FDA, CBD, I'm sure, has come up. What have you been hearing from them? And have they given any guidance to how they might regulate CBD going forward in the future?
Well, let me start by saying what CFCR does intend to do is to explain how we see the regulatory process. You're right. We see an industry that is being legalized and needs to be regulated. And without getting into regulations or no regulations, we had the FDA on our webinar in October or November, I can't remember which. And during that webinar, you may have recalled, if anyone listened to what Janet Woodcock was saying about halfway through, it was that the FDA was in a pre-decisional process. That sort of language for they are working internally to try to determine what to do with, as I interpreted it, and I will say it's my interpretation, it's CBD. And they, during the webinar, shared that they are going to be coming out of the pre-decisional process. And what that meant to me is they are going to make recommendations, guidelines, and eventually regulations about CBD in various forms in products. This is not CBD that has been legalized by the Farm Bill, but the fact is, and I think we all know, we do not have a cannabinoid marketplace that allows for products in a federally legally. And one of the things that CFCR is trying to do is help stakeholders in the industry to expedite the, shall we say, need for regulation. I look at the federal government, it has been built for accountability and it's built for transparency, but it is not built for speed. I'm sure that's a guess. That's a surprise to everybody. And so we're trying to look at novel ways to perhaps expedite the process.
So you don't see them differentiating between hemp-derived CBD?
Well, they're a scientific agency, and I think it's intellectually dishonest to say that CBD from a CBD molecule from a hemp plant and a CBD molecule from a marijuana plant is different. They are the same molecule. And so
That's a good thing.
Thank you.
So
I guess I said something good. I'll stick with that. Maybe I should leave now before I get into hot water with this.
Oh, no. Please continue. Please continue. I didn't want that to interrupt your thought. I just wanted to make sure that we were sharing our cheers with you.
So if you see CBD molecule being the same on both sides, how does the FDA move forward with recommendations or standards or any guidelines without legalization?
Well, we're talking about a molecule called CBD. So when you're talking about legalization of CBD, the process of FDA, as you know, is slow. So we are not going to have regulations that I see coming out tomorrow, even when, and this is a guess, even when the FDA gets to the point, and I think they are getting to the point based on what they have said, and specifically in that webinar, to issue guidelines or preliminary regulations, and that is what I see happening in 2023.
Do you feel that there's pressure at all coming from the Biden administration to get this done?
I think that when you look at what Biden said and you have listened to the Congress who has encouraged FDA to get moving, that the FDA has gotten the message. I think they're very interested in moving ahead. Having spoken with them, and I think they said it loud and clear on the webinar, they are anxious to get going and not kick the can down the road. And I think regulating is critical. I think we have a bit of a public health crisis going on here, and I think we absolutely need the FDA to step up and do what it needs to do to ensure that we have safe product.
By public health crisis, do you mean like concerns about kids having products in schools, or the products, the contents not being the same as what's on the packaging, or what is being perceived as the public health crisis?
Yes and yes. Right now we have, as I understand it, I haven't seen it myself, but I understand that we have psychoactive substances for sale in gas stations, and I've seen pictures of it. And I think that is very accessible to kids and developing brains, and probably not the best place to sell psychoactive products.
So Sherry, what you're referring
like tobacco and alcohol?
Products like Delta 8 and HHC, which are these other kind of compounds that are ultimately derived from CBD isolate. That's what you're referring to, correct?
Yeah, I mean, what I've been told is there's Delta 8, is Delta 10, there's THCO. I'm not and have never seen these products, but I understand that they're psychoactive. I understand there's heavy metals in some of this. These products are being ingested by people, and we don't know what folks are ingesting, and that's a public health crisis to me.
So I agree with you about that. I agree with that 100%.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to say, like, I'm a huge fan, and not just of your words, but also of the style. I love the glasses and the outfit that you had on in the webinar with the matching with the matching scarf. That was such a flex. I'm a big fan. So my question to you is.
He buttered me up. Now he's going to say
yeah, he did.
Get your helmet on.
No. My question, I just wanted to ask if you have any insight on this. The story that I covered at the end of last year, it kind of flew under the radar of a lot of people. The DEA put out a memo saying that they were going to be overseeing all of the lab testing in hemp facilities. And it's still up on the DEA's website and the U.S. government website, but Marijuana Moment reported on it 3 days ago that they've extended the enforcement deadline rule notice last week. But they said that it's going to be happening by January 1st, 2000. Their deadline was December 31st of 2023. Do you have any insight on when that's going to happen? Because I think that is very much tied to the THC market and when they are trying to predict when things are going to be more widely available. I'm not going to say federal legalization is going to happen anytime soon, but maybe they were banking on, or they were betting on safe banking. What are your thoughts there?
I don't know if anybody's betting on safe banking. It's a crapshoot. I think the time has come, and I am not a safe banking expert, so I will say nothing more. I'm rooting because I think that's a safety issue as well. With regard to DEA, I am embarrassed to say I'm not aware of this, but I will look it up the minute I get off of this because I don't want to be caught flat-footed again.
Okay. I'm not trying to be a gotcha journalist.
No, not at all. This is really important. And look, as the FDA is the gateway to the federal government, I think labs are the gateway to safe products. So whether the DEA is the right organization or not, I have no opinion. But I think our labs are front line to ensuring that we have safe product. And that's really what I'm concerned about as a public citizen. And I'm concerned about, as you say.
And
Dr. Mary.
We dropped $11 million on a lab on standardization. We're having issues in California here. Do you think they'll be able to do that on a national level with any kind of competency?
It's going to take years. And yes, I do think they will be able to. There's the National Institute. There are organizations within the federal government that are laboratories and set standards and work with private industry and work with nonprofit organizations to set standards. And I really encourage people to get involved. This is your industry as much as everybody else's. And the more you get involved in the regulatory process, the more you can be happy if you have certain things that your voice is heard. I think it's critical. I think everyone needs to be involved in the regulatory process that's a stakeholder of this industry. And that is certainly cannabis industry participants.
I'd like to flash back real quick to the doctor's comment about psychoactive and unsafe products at the gas station. I'm so confused about the logic by this when those products, you have to be 18 years old or older to buy. Tobacco and alcohol are sold in gas stations, and those are shown to cause cancer and lead to dementia. Hydrogenated oils are available in children's snacks that are actually pushed to children. Hydrogenated oils are shown to cause cancer and have been approved by the FDA. Also, like red DNC number 40, that's a dye and colorant that causes brain damage and cancer. And so, to me, that's just a real logically inconsistent statement. And it's so interesting how we're always in a rush to attack cannabis because of the culture war, while feeding straight cancerous chemicals to our kids and pushing cancer and these other very deleterious psychoactive substances at these same gas stations. I'm just wondering if anybody can proffer an explanation as to the logical through line here and how any of what was said was consistent.
Well, and I would also like to say that gas stations are not necessarily gas stations as they were 15 years ago. I mean, a lot of these gas stations are little bodegas that have all kinds of healthy selections and lots of really delicious flavored waters. And then they do, I mean, you know, the people that are selling these, I know the markets that are selling these products, and it's not unusual for them to have $100 price point at their checkouts. I mean, it's not exactly common, but they have plenty of products that people can get. Like you say, there are plenty of psychoactive substances already available. So I don't understand the concern about these being available there either.
If you want me to comment, I don't think that we continue to do. I don't think we continue to make accessible to kids at 18 psychoactive products without their truly understanding. That happens to be a personal opinion. I don't know enough about the science, as you said before, Dr. Mary, of cannabis. I do know that people get sick. I do know that some of the products out there, many of the products out there are hallucinogenic, as I would call it. And I've seen people not even be aware when they're drinking a drink that has, actually, my stockbroker was drinking I guess it was a juice with THCA, and he didn't realize, and he got pretty messed up. And this is a 45-year-old man. So I'm not totally comfortable, but that's not for me to determine. It's for the federal government to determine. And I think that we have to set on an age when folks can access cannabis. I also think that, as you well know, alcohol got a free pass. Whether it would today is another question, but it doesn't mean that we want to compound issues. And I think we want to create the safest environment for our kids that we possibly can.
Probably raise the age on tobacco too.
Yeah, we need to keep moving, but I would like to thank Sherry so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much, Sherry. We appreciate it.
I'm having Adam drop the US CFCR website into the stream for us so everyone can see it. And please go to their website. You can watch the webinars. You can see the conversation with the FDA firsthand. So please go and check that out. It's under their policy and advocacy tab. So they have a lot of great resources.
Oh yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Gretchen. That was fantastic to have Sherry here with us.
Yeah, that was great, Gretchen. Way to go.
Yes, good job, Gretchen. But coming up next, he's a cannabis wizard, doing his damnedest to continue the work of the Merry Pranksters of the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. Alongside the Hogwarts PhD and tripping balls, this co-host of What's Good, the Cannabis Flower and Hash Review Show, as well as host of Radio Free Earth podcast, Boasting over 33 years in the game for sales, genetics, cultivation, it is none other than the immortal Transylvanian Count himself, Mathieu St. Germain.
Off mute on a Thursday. Thanks, Jason. And thanks, everybody. I'm filling in short notice, so this is a long article. I'm going to kind of edit it as I read, but bear with me here. So voters in 5 Texas cities have approved decriminalizing marijuana. Now city officials are standing in the way. The fight in several Texas cities to decriminalize marijuana has entered a new phase as some city leaders have rebuffed voter-approved rules that largely end criminal enforcement against having small amounts of the substance. Last month, residents in Denton, San Marcos, Killeen, Elgin, and Harker Heights overwhelmingly approved ballot measures that sought to ban arrests and citations for carrying less than 4 ounces of marijuana in most instances. They also approved new rules blocking cities from funding THC concentration tests, plus removing marijuana smell as a probable cause for search and seizure in most cases. Unfortunately, winning over voters was just half the battle. Since then, organizers behind the ballot questions in some cities have clashed with their city and county leaders who are tasked with putting the new laws in place, as well as law enforcement. Those officials have said the effort violates state law and hinders police officers. The battle has been toughest in Harker Heights, a town of about 33,000 people, about 55 miles southwest of Waco. Despite the proposition winning more than 60% of the votes, the city council decided to repeal the ordinance just 2 weeks later. City manager David Mistral said in a subsequent letter that the decision to decriminalize should be left to the state. A vote is a vote, Alexander Burt, one of the people who voted yes to these measures, said. We are also aware that minorities disproportionately take the brunt of the law, so it is time for that proposition to go through. To force the city council's hand, the Burts and hundreds of other residents backed a new petition by Ground Game Texas, a progressive group that co-led the decriminalization campaign to put the council's decision to repeal on the May ballot and revive the ordinance in the meantime. So they're going to re-vote to repass this thing that the council has repealed. Julie Oliver, the group's executive director, said the council's decision to revoke a popular choice by voters has backfired. Shutting down someone's vote is ill-advised, so this has really brought the community together, she said. Organizers across the state face similar pushback and also say they would prefer the Texas legislature to pass laws that would decriminalize or even legalize marijuana, though they acknowledge how unlikely that is given the state's conservative power structure. We can all see that this country is heading state by state, where this country is heading state by state. But it looks like Texas is going to be one of the last, said Deb Armentor, a decriminalized Denton organizer and a former city council member who championed decriminalization during her 2 terms. There's no point in cities waiting any longer. I think it's really interesting, too, in a Republican-led state with all of the Republican cries about voter intimidation, voter fraud, et cetera, that they're the ones that are actually repealing the will of the voters. I think that's important to note. And I think it's time for legalization, decriminalization to spread. This is Count St. Germain for the High at 9 News.
Oh yes. No, I agree with you halfway on that. Mathieu St. Germain. It is deplorable the fact that that these Texas representatives are going against the will of the people. They need to fall in line with the votes, and if that's the case, and they feel that way, they should have maybe campaigned a little harder against the issue if that was the case. You there, Rico?
Yeah, I find it quite interesting that in California we have a ballot system as well, and it's in our California Constitution that the legislature and the governor cannot actually overturn anything that people of California vote for.
Well, we're not sure a lot of people in California are actually voting in California, so that's all.
It's like 20. It's like 20-30%. Yeah.
Anything on that, Gretchen?
No, I agree. The will of the voters should be followed. I mean, this is just like in Mississippi where they find some way to get around stuff. Same thing happened in South Dakota.
Yeah, in South Dakota.
It's ridiculous. So it would be nice if our elected officials, elected by us, would listen to what the people want. And we've all seen the poll numbers. The people want cannabis. So they need to start taking care of it.
Exactly.
Check. Key, you guys hear me now?
I hear you, Rico. But coming up next, she's an integrative medicine internist and a second-time best-selling author, the CEO of Balanced Medicinals. Dr. Mary joins us today from the streets of NYC, and she does the research and converts it into effective treatments so you don't have to. When she's not treating patients with alternative medicines, she can be found in front of her video camera looking or walking the Upper West Side of New York, looking for all the trappiest weed on the trap tables on all the streets of New York. That's right. It is Dr. Mary Clifton.
Oh, hello, everybody. I hope everybody's Thursday is going well. I've been on the wrong day all week, so I kept thinking today was Friday. So I've got a longer week than everybody else, I guess. I have a article from Marijuana Moment about the Louisiana Medical Board. Louisiana Medical Board temporarily allows medical marijuana recommendations via telemedicine following a senator's criticism. So before the pandemic, a lot of things didn't get handled telemedically. Basically, the gist of this story is that. And then during the pandemic, in fact, before the pandemic, I was having some trouble with the Texas Medical Board and with the Arkansas Medical Board because I was doing disability work telemedically. And they were arguing that I couldn't do a musculoskeletal exam effectively via video and audio. And so we were back and forth with that a bit. And then all of a sudden the pandemic happened and everybody everywhere was doing exams on everything telemedically. And suddenly their argument really pretty well dried up because we can't shut down the entire medical system because of, because we have to do things by video. So a lot of things that used to require a brick and mortar visit, like getting a cannabis card, went to telemedicine. But now that the pandemic is easing up, a lot of people are backing out of these telemedicine plans and going back to brick and mortar operations, which is really impacting people who have built businesses around the telemedicine delivery of whatever it is that they were trying to deliver. And in this case, it's a cannabis card. So Louisiana started to go back to doctors who are continuing to do telemedicine cannabis cards and start to threaten them with a board action, which is a big deal because when the board threatens you with board action, that's about a $20,000 burden on the doctor to prove that whatever they're doing was okay and then to pay the fine that the board eventually levies on you. It's sort of a cost of doing business things for doctors. And when you actually get into a conversation with other doctors, you find that virtually everybody has had to pay off a board for whatever little issue they had at whatever point they had it. So this was just an opportunity for Louisiana to go after a large number of doctors and be able to collect these revenues. But the senator actually said in the process of talking to the board that he might take away their ability to create rules and develop actions around rules if they don't back off on this telemedicine thing, which makes me think that he probably has an investment in some sort of telemedicine program that he wants to see expanded in Louisiana and not restricted. But in any case, it looks like telemedical cannabis cards are still alive and well in Louisiana until, some additional regulation is allowed to slide through. And hopefully they stay that way in other states. I believe that during the pandemic, Oregon also made it much easier. Yeah, Lee is saying there's telehealth appointments in Texas. You can do them that way of course, in Iowa and also in Michigan. So it really is, given the low risk and low danger of the drug, it's certainly no riskier than providing somebody an antibiotic over the phone, which doctors do all day long for all kinds of urinary tract infections and various complaints. So this is a good step forward, I think, that people are really questioning why somebody who needs a cannabis card has to go to a brick and mortar and undergo direct in-person physical examination in order to get that card. They really don't. So continuing this as a telemedicine product is a good step for Louisiana. Not a place that we see a lot of really progressive thought going forward. So whatever was behind the action, I'm just really glad that they are sticking with a telemedicine model. And this is Dr. Mary Clifton reporting from New York City.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Mary. And we are short on that. We're a little bit overtime now, so we're going to close it out. Thank you all of you for tuning in with us for another episode of High at 9 News. You can always catch us weekdays at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our live audience members and online supporters tuning in and giving us feedback on the daily headlines of chaos known to everybody as the developing cannabis industry. Our vetted industry correspondent team, thank you all for tuning in from all over the global community, bringing us much needed variety of perspective and adding your respected opinions to the conversations. And the wonderful Jaja Simone over there in Clubhouse holding things down for us like she can only do. And a special thank you out to the haters. We see, hear, and love you deeply. Y'all make it worthwhile. The sacrifices you make to get up early daily, watch or listen to us live, just to talk shit, is the exact formula needed to make America great again. Finally, Cannabis Sativa L, thank you for blessing us with your presence, continuing to heal, uplift, and excite us daily, and giving us the energy needed for the High at 9 News team to do what we do. It has been Thursday, December 15th, 2022. The show's over, and you've all been blessed with the top industry headlines of the day. We hope it was enough to put in your pipe and smoke it at least until tomorrow. My name is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street, signing off. And please remember, when life gives you no place else to turn, you can always turn the fuck up. Jason, what you got?
Oh, yes. Have a great day, everybody. It's Thursday. We're almost to Friday, Dr. Mary. We're just a few hours away. Rest run it out. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.